So, um, for those of us who keep up with politics pretty regularly, yesterday, while Pelosi was in Washington, a guy in his early 40s broke into her house looking for her, and her husband was there. And the man who, I guess, was dissatisfied with the fact that she wasn't there decided to attack her husband instead with a hammer. He's in critical condition, but he's apparently making a recovery. And I thought I'd speak about the broader implications of this. First things first, we should mention that Republican response to it has been all over the place. You've had people like McConnell and McCarthy come out and condemn it. You've had Trump stay silent. You've had some people on Twitter writing some stuff that makes me want to vomit. And what I've always thought was so disturbing, because like when we look at the mass shootings, for example, I always point to the fact that back in the 60s, 70s, even the 80s, right, this wasn't a thing that happened that often. But political, like attacks on political figures have been ingrained in American society pretty much since it started. Like after the first generation of, like the founding fathers, I mean, you had an assassination attempt on Andrew Jackson, for example. Um, and of course, the unfortunate, killings of, Garfield, McKinley, Lincoln, and Kennedy. Really was trying to say those in order, but I messed up. But what I thought was so interesting is that I got a lot of flashbacks to when Steve Scalise was shot 5 years ago during that baseball game by that Democrat, or when Rand Paul's neighbor attacked him. And in the case of both of those, I remember reading comments from people who were like hoping for their demise. And in one case, I actually mentioned this a while back, there was a woman I used to talk to who laughed at some joke that somebody made about Rand's neighbor being right because he voted a certain way on some um, package for the virus, some kind of thing where they were trying to make some comment about it being right to have had this man, referring to Rand's neighbor, physically assault him. And this woman found that funny, and it was one of the things that made me disgusted with her and ultimately distance myself from her. But I noticed that we have had this thing ingrained in American citizens for a very long time, that if you disagree with someone politically, it is okay to wish bodily harm on them. And in more extreme cases, it is okay to even support an attempt to commit bodily harm on them. Um, if I'm remembering correctly, with everybody's favorite Congresswoman from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she supported posts that were calling for Obama's assassination. So this is a thing that even people who've been elected, lawmakers themselves, have backed. You saw the same thing with Graham. What was that earlier this year, where he was calling for some Russian civilians to murder Putin? All this gross stuff, right? But what's interesting to me is that, generally speaking, I can't think of many instances where the spouse of a major American politician was harmed over someone disliking their husband. Now, I know that Michelle, Obama, received threats while she was in the White House, but I can't really think of, like, oh, this person couldn't find the senator or the governor or the president or the congressman, so I'm going to go and attack their spouse. And it's really scary how people don't think of how disturbing this is, where if you, because I always said before, my policy with lawmakers is, if there's one I don't like, the main fate I wish for them that could be considered bad or mean spirited is that they lose office. I don't want them to lose their lives. One, because I think it's immoral to pray for the demise of a person, even if they enact policies that you think are destructive, you don't like, et cetera, et cetera. Um, Two, even if someone were, like, for example, let's pretend for the sake of, and I'm glad it didn't happen, but let's just hypothetical, someone was able to assassinate Trump. If that happened, he would have his supporters calling him a martyr who stood for these conservative principles, and the woke uh, socialist people destroyed him or whatever. And then Pence would take office after that, right? Because he was the vice president at the time, and pretty much continue the exact same policies that Trump was seemingly taken out over. So I don't think it makes any sense morally or practically to support these types of things happening. Um, and man, it's so scary to me how, like, I go and I read through the comment sections on these sites. You have people who wish for bodily harm of commentators. Like, I've seen people describe somebody, including myself, as having a punchable face. And I'm like, what the hell is wrong with you? But this is the depravity of people, and it's only been exposed more and more by the internet. And I always have to accept that you don't even have to be someone important like Obama or Trump or Pence or Biden, whoever. If you are related to someone who's important, if you talk about something and a person has a dissenting view from you, you can expect some segment of people that don't agree with you to support you receiving some physical fate that is misfortunate. And that just tells you that we live in an era, or excuse me, I shouldn't even say an era. We've had a perpetual thing in American society where we just hate each other, and even people who've never directly done anything to us, we have this animosity for that that just overreaches itself. Like, again, if I don't like a Congress person or some other elect official, I'll vote them out. Um, if I don't like a YouTube commentator, I just won't watch them anymore. But it's really scary to me that people are like, that attack should not have happened. There is something wrong when you live in a society where a person doesn't like a lawmaker. And believe me, I'm no fan of Pelosi either. I wish she had been gone and gotten rid of pretty much from when Obama lost the House back in 2010. I wish she had been gone since then, and they got somebody else to have that seat and to be, the party leadership. But you can't go around attacking people because they vote a way you don't like, or people that are related to them because they happen to be the spouse of someone you don't like. And a lot of Americans, and I'm just gonna hope and say that it's not most, but there are a lot of Americans who support that stuff, who actually back violence, and that should be because if we go down this path, we might as well turn into Saudi Arabia. What does Saudi Arabia do? Oh, you didn't do what we wanted you to. Hey, we'll take you in this bunker. You'll never come out. Oh, if you don't do what we want you to in this foreign country, we'll send you one of your relatives' fingers in a jar. What's the difference between us and them if we have people who not only try to do this stuff to public officials, but also to people who they're related to? So it's a really disturbing case that reminds me of a lot of other times, just not even like historically, but over the last couple of years of different people related to the political process being put through some type of physical strain, or otherwise being put in some position where they are under physical duress by another person. And there being a segment of individuals who cheer for it and are happy and are glad that this happened. And there's something wrong with Americans that are like that. And I think supporting the demise of people you don't agree with, not people who've done something to you personally, people who have voted a certain way you didn't like, said something you didn't like, I think that is un-American.